Hello and welcome to week 3. Sorry, let me fix that. Week 3 of EDU 506. I just wanted to pre-warn you that I am recording this early. As I noted, I will be out of town this upcoming weekend and will not have the opportunity to record most likely. I will be trying to work on some grading before I leave for the weekend, but most likely that will happen later on in the week, next week. This week, we're going to look at classroom instructional strategies and trajectories of post-traumatic experiences. We're going to read chapters 4 and 5 of Rossen and Vandernoot-Lipsky, chapters 1 and 2. There are some discussion board learning activities, and for opening remarks, my last slide has a sentence starter for you to respond to. We're also going to look ahead to next week and assignment number 2. So this is the resilience cycle. If you open up the slides, there should be a link to it right down here, as well as a description of it. But long story short, trauma doesn't impact everybody the same, and there are different outcomes. There's growth from trauma. There could be being in recovery after trauma, and you could be in impairment after trauma. Generally, we speak most about impairment and how trauma negatively impacts folks. But the hope is that with more trauma-informed resources and more trauma-informed adults in classrooms, maybe we can help kids get to recovery and or even better growth. Discussion board 1 this week. There is a self-assessment. Thank you to those that pointed out that it wasn't working. We have replaced it with another one. After you do the self-assessment, please respond to these questions. How has this assessment informed, enlightened, and or inspired you as an educator? How does this connect or not with mindfulness awareness for educators? Just a reminder that your initial post requires in-text citations or a reference page. It doesn't require a reference page, but just make sure you include citations. Scholarly peer-reviewed articles are accepted. However, they aren't required for this post. Frankly, if you cite the self-assessment site, that is an in-text citation, and it is good practice on how to cite that type of thing. Make sure that you dialogue with at least 2 of your cohort colleagues. And for discussion number 2, we're going to talk about Vandernoot-Lipsky. In chapter 2, she states that reactions to the hardships of humans, animals, and our planet, that is, trauma exposure response, may manifest very differently at 3 levels. But the risk of behaviors that inadvertently magnify the pain and suffering of direct trauma is always present. The more deeply we realize this, the more we understand the potential and the necessity for a trauma stewardship approach. So please reflect on the 3 levels identified as having an influence on trauma stewardship. They are personal dynamics, organizational tendencies, and societal forces. Which of these levels resonated with you the most, and why? And what is one takeaway that you want to incorporate into your classroom or school environment? And 3, are there any barriers or challenges you foresee in doing so? Assignment number 2 is interventions, community, and societal trauma. So the purpose of this assignment, reminder, this is due Saturday of week 4. So we're looking ahead another 2 weeks here. I always like to try to look out at least 2 weeks for assignments for those that like to start working on them earlier. The purpose is to identify interventions addressing the impact of community or societal violence, especially within the juvenile population. Identify a source of trauma from Rosen's textbooks, chapters 6 through 10, and the implications for student learning in your classroom. What does the research suggest as appropriate resources and intervention strategies to help support student learning and social emotional growth? This should be written in 3rd person and include the following. Number 2, identify a source of trauma your students are or may be exposed to and how it impacts student learning success. Make sure you cite research. And then identify resources and intervention strategies to support student learning and social emotional growth. Everything else is the same as assignment 1. Again, 2 pages of written content. One of the things I've learned as I've journeyed farther into education and just being an adult is that there are different forms of rest I take to care for myself. It's not just sleep or lounging. I actually relax through competing in games, be that video games or board games. I find reading, even if the books are heavy, to be a source of care for myself. My wife finds interacting with people and making small talk to be rejuvenizing, whereas I find it to be the opposite. She also finds just sitting outside to be rejuvenating, where I do not. So just know that there are different forms of rest, and it is very possible that they are very different, even amongst those closest to you. Here are 2 resources that help explain the concept. You do not need to watch these or read them, but you are very welcome to. For your response to the initial marks this week, please finish the sentence starters. The 2 types of rest I will try to embrace this week are ... Have a great week. If you need me, please reach out to my email address and I will aim for responding within 24 hours. Again, have a great week.